Next thing I want to talk about is the cash fund and the fees. And there's been a number of rumors going around. I can't tell you the number of times my phone rings and I answer it, and I'm asked to justify how I'm charging a $50,000 or $100,000 license fee, and it's just simply not the case. This organization, or I should say this industry, will be regulated with something called a cash fund. And a cash fund is separate and distinct from something called the general fund appropriation. General fund appropriation is generally where all the tax dollars throughout the state go into this very large pot of money. And all the entities that need budgetary funding have to compete for that dollar. And we've all heard about the economy. We've all been a subject or a victim of what's happened to the economy over the past several years. And the reality is the general fund revenues are shrinking. When the general fund revenues shrink, the only thing that can happen is programs are eliminated and or appropriations are cut significantly. With the cash fund organization, I'm going to steal Dan Hartman's analogy, but it's akin to building a house. And if you'll go back, if you ever had a house built, it's relatively expensive to have a house built these days. And if you think of it, currently I have no employees, we have no desks, we have no chairs, no pencils, phones, no computers, all the regulatory things or all the business things that we're going to need to regulate the industry. With that said, please keep in mind that any fees that are going to be charged in the next year are earmarked for the benefit of this industry. And let me give an example of what I'm saying. If I need to collect, for sake of argument, $1 million over the next year to cover the cost to regulate the industry, and I collect $1,250,000, next year's appropriation will be reduced by $250,000, so your fees will go down significantly. That money stays in a fund for the benefit of everybody in this room. All right, there's no general fund competing for precious dollars. That money will stay in that fund and be used to the benefit of this industry. Now, state law requires that cash funds are allowed to collect their appropriation, that is the amount of funding that the General Assembly gives us on an annual basis, plus a reserve fund of 16.5% of that appropriation. Unfortunately, last year, the auto industry saw a huge downturn. We've seen the bankruptcies by Chrysler and some of the others. And license fees, people were going out of business and didn't have the ability to pay fees. They didn't pay fees, there was not enough money in the cash fund to cover the expenses. I literally had to take half of the staff in that division and displace them. Rather than lay them off, they have a huge amount of expertise to do what they do. Rather than laying them off, we had another piece of legislation, Amendment 50, and I was able to temporarily displace them and put them in that division. Had I not had those vacancies, those employees would not be employed now. And for those of you who have bought a car and had a problem, I can tell you it's probably one of the more technical regulatory arenas I've ever been involved with, bar none. So I'm very fortunate that I had that 16.5% reserve. Those reserves are, those other vacancies in the other divisions to save those staff and use their expertise in the future. So we will collect our appropriation plus an additional 16.5%. Now, I'm just going to tell you what's contemplated for the dispensary license fees at this point. And it's based on a model that was discussed prior to the end of the General Assembly, and it's based on the number of patients assigned, or registered, I should say, with the dispensaries or the centers. And if you have 0 to 300 patients, you're looking at an application fee due August 1st of about $7,500. If you have 301 to 500 patients, you're looking at approximately $12,500. And if you have 501 patients or more, you're looking at about $18,000. That's a ton of money. Now, the part that I haven't shared with you is cash funds are based on the number of users that are in the fund. And right now, you've heard numbers of the number of 1,100 was mentioned earlier. We have identified a little over 1,100 dispensaries or centers currently doing business in Colorado. How many qualify? How many can go through the financial, the criminal background checks and those kind of things? I don't know. It would be a guess if I were to give you a percentage. But the reality is, till that August 1st deadline comes and goes, and everybody files their application, I have no idea how many dispensers are out there. So I have no idea what my regulatory needs are going to be. I have no idea what my expenses are going to be to cover the industry, and I have no idea in terms of revenue the amount of money that I need to collect to adequately regulate the industry. I will tell you that I intend to hire a number of contract or temporary staff in the short run, post-certified police officer standard training certified people that I can get, probably retired people, those kind of things, to help keep costs down, that will help me do background investigations, because the reality is I will have one hell of a need come July 1 or August when the applications are filed. But once those background investigations have diminished a little bit, my need's probably going to subside. What I'm going to propose, and what actually the legislation, HB 1284, provides, is that we have one criminal investigative resource for every 10 dispensaries that are licensed in the state. I would tell you that we intend to set up offices on a regional basis throughout the state. We'll have a headquarters here in Denver. We will have one office up north, either in Greeley or Fort Collins. At this point, because of Greeley's position, it will most likely be Fort Collins. We will have one in the southern part of the state, Colorado Springs and or Pueblo, and I'll have one in Grand Junction. It's also our intent to staff those offices on August 1st with critical staff so that those dispensaries in Grand Junction don't have to travel to Denver to file an application to meet the requirements of this bill. We want to make it as easy as possible for you folks. With that, let's talk about the timelines. Or let me finish my thought here. Got a little ahead of myself. Once I know the total number of dispensaries, grows, edible manufacturers, occupational licenses, key licenses, support licenses, plus I kind of know how many stars are in the sky, if you want to look at it that way, what my global universe looks like, I will then be able to forecast what the expenses are going to be based on the numbers that I provided you. And from there, it's just a simple math problem. Okay? We divide the costs amongst everybody. If I've collected too much money on August 1st, that money will go in the pot for next year, pool for next year, whatever you want to call it, and our need will be diminished by that much, or reduced by that much next year. So that's an ongoing, secular kind of thing. On an annual basis, we'll do a rulemaking hearing to do fee setting. It's a public forum. We come in and tell you, this is what our need is, this is the revenue we need to generate, here's where we're at, and here's what we think license fees should be. You as an industry have input into that process, so please get informed and stay informed. And as I said, I'm hopeful that we will have the two-way communication henceforth. Timelines. As you know, on 7/1, July 1 of this year, we have to be operator and have an application filed with the local governments. Now, there's an argument as to whether or not a moratorium exists in the bill. I'm not a lawyer, don't pretend to be a lawyer. Honestly, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I can create a pretty good argument for both sides of that equation, and I'm going to leave it up to the lawyers to be. But the key from my standpoint is you have to be operator or have filed an application in that local venue by 7/1, and I think everybody up here has agreed kind of with that date. August 1st is when you'll have to file the application with us. As I mentioned, we hope to have forms available on the web July 1st, and there's a reason why we don't want to put them up there until July 1st. If I put them out there today, and you're diligent in your filing, and you pay your fees now, the money's going to go in this year's budget and not next year's budget, and the industry will not get the benefit of any monies paid. So we have to wait till July 1st, okay? Also know that there's a provision that if a local license is issued after August 1st of this year, the local's got to issue within 30 days. We will honor, as a state licensing authority, we will honor those applications coming in from the local governments. You file your application August 1st. September 1st, you have to certify that you're producing at least 70% of the medicine that you are selling from your center yourself. And then, of course, July 1 of 2011, the entire act is effective. That's when you're subject to the hours of operation and all the other regulatory things that we're going to work on over this next year. Now, Bob Dill was kind enough to list a number of those regulatory things, and in fact, there's 2022 listed in the bill, and I've identified probably 4 or 5 times that I think that need to be addressed. I'll give you an example of one of the things the bill provides and why there's a need to do rulemaking. But if you look